Hey, we're back with another episode of The Unfair Advantage. I am your host, Brad Starnes. Today I'm excited to be joined by the one and only Allison Hillman, who is the founder of Been There Photography. Allison is celebrated for capturing life's most beautiful moments and is recognized among St. Louis's most elite photographers. She is an engaging speaker and passionate about supporting of small businesses using her platform to inspire and educate others. Allison transitioned from corporate America to build a successful photography business several years ago, a transition that I am proud to have a small piece in. She has overcame challenges of dyslexia and ADHD, leveraging her unique perspective to creatively solve problems and think outside of the box. She balanced the demands of adopting a child during the pandemic, demonstrating remarkable strength and adaptability. But before we dive in, let's not forget that today's podcast is sponsored by Screaming Cow Marketing Group, which is a full service marketing agency that helps home service businesses from around the U.S. grow their leads through utterly unforgettable marketing experiences. So if your business is looking for more of the right work to do, you can call the guys who move. Allison, welcome on.
Hello. How are you?
Hey, hey. Doing good, doing good. Give me 1 second as we're talking. I'm trying a new podcast setup. So I got to flip around my screen so I can see you on the left-hand side and all of that. So obviously I went in and gave a little intro of like what you do and all of that. But if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving everybody who's listening exactly what you do with your business.
Sure. First and foremost, I'm known for photography. So I'm the Allison in BTP by Allison. I specialize in weddings and events, families and kiddos, and branding. Branding's a little bit different than what some photographers do around here. If you want something super stuffy and like in a box in a studio, which that's your brand standards for your business and whatever, perfect. I'm not your girl. But call me and I will send you to the best of the best. If you want your social media branding and like your story captured, that's what I do. So, and then I am the speaking engagements that you spoke about. I specialize in helping small business owners own their stuff and personal development, especially for women. Catered around the definition of motherhood or self-talk and the importance of that and finding your tribe.
Okay, okay. Awesome. Yeah, I had what my family had pics done from you years ago. I did my pics last year of high school. We just did a personal branding shoot and everything for
Yeah.
me.
Your second
Which
one,
by the way,
actually.
yes, yes, absolutely. So it is a lot of fun. I am somebody who is not like, I feel like I'm not photogenic at all. And
Yes, you
like you just do a phenomenal like getting people to like smile like naturally. Otherwise, like a lot of times like my smiles I feel like seem like super fake in a way. So that's one thing that Allison does super, super well. So one of the things I kind of want to touch on before we kind of get into like the unfair advantage and all that stuff is your transition from corporate America into like being an entrepreneur full time and running your business. I talk with a lot of people. I've actually been talking to somebody very close to me who like they don't see a lot of potential in themselves. And so it's hard for them, and they're kind of in a way, I'm gonna say, caught in this corporate cogwheel. The money's great, the benefits are great, all those things. And so it's hard for them to make that jump from like being in corporate America to doing their own thing. So what went into that and what finally got you to actually make that jump?
So I'm really, really, really blessed. I'm in September, I'll have been married for 15 years. So I have an incredible partner
Congrats.
who so if you've ever done the color wheel test, he is very much a green and a gold. So he is not an encourager. He calls it as it is, and that just is what it is. But he came home from getting promoted. He's at a different job now, but the job he was at the time, this was 6 years ago, and said, "Hey, you've been turning down work to be somewhere you hate. Do you want to try your photography full time?" And I was like, "You're on drugs." Because I mean, it was successful as a side hustle, but
Yeah.
I mean, that jump is hard because I was
Yep.
I was in HR and I was very, very good at my job. I saved my company a lot of money. Like a lot of people talk about making a company a lot of money. I saved my company a lot of money with
Okay.
lawsuits and things like that. So, which I guess technically means I made them a lot of money too. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So, I had turned out a really big event, and that was like, I was pissed, for lack of a better word. I don't chase money, but when money comes to me, I'm very happy to say hello and invite it in.
Right.
So, um, we made a plan, and it was a 6-month plan, and that was at the beginning of 2018. And I remember sitting in a conference room in a meeting, not being heard. They listened, but I wasn't being heard. Big difference. And I'm literally going, I don't have to be here. And knowing that I could take it, and like, it was like I was in the same boat of the hamster wheel of, but benefits, but this, but this, but this. And then I am very much a blue and an orange, so I need to be heard. And I'm pretty smart. If you have me in a room, you'll figure that out. And not being, when the things that my bonus was based off of, I was getting no say in them.
Okay.
And I would throw out ideas, and they just, so then I got up and walked out and ended up turning in my notice, and the rest is history. It did
Okay.
not, I didn't last 6 more months.
So at that point, you kind of, in a way, like you and your husband had talked about you leaving, but in the moment, it was kind of like you guys had talked about it, and you're like, I'm done. Like, I'm just gonna do this now. Put it in, and then came home and told him, like,
I
hey,
came
this is
home
what I
and went,
did.
I turned in my notice today, and he goes, well, you lasted longer than I thought you would.
Well, you know what? At least you guys had a plan, because I think I've told you how with
Oh, you
Avery
had
and
no
I,
plan.
like, it was like she came in and said you're a walking zombie, and like the next day I put in my notes. I think I waited. Now looking back, I think I actually waited like 2 days, because I wanted to do it in person, and we were hybrid. We were only in office like Tuesday, Thursday, or something like that. And I feel like I was gonna tell my boss on like a Thursday, because she came to me like on Tuesday night, and then like I wound up going in office and he wasn't there, and so I had to tell him over the phone anyways. I'm like, well, this is crap. So, and it was miserable because of, with my speech and everything like that, I was in like a very bad kind of dip at that point, where it was like
Oh, yeah.
I could even order food in the like fast food drive through, and I remember just like tripping up over my words about it. And I'm like, this guy probably thinks you're a freaking
And when
moron or
you get
something.
anxious, it gets worse. I've noticed, like, when you have a
Yep.
little bit, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yep. I was looking for it. I don't have it here. I got a couple bottles of anxiety pills and all of that to kind of help like bring it down and everything. That's one thing that I've realized like actually helps me kind of tame it down and everything.
Yeah.
And so now I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can I transition into like getting away from it? So like I'm now day 5 or 6 of not drinking energy drinks again, because I've noticed that the energy drinks have a huge effect on it.
So it's a big deal for you, though, because you're addicted
Yeah,
to those, dude.
a slight addiction. You know, it was just one a day at that point, sometimes two, but
Okay. Well, then you cut it down then, and I'm proud of you. Anyway.
it used to be a lot worse. It used to be a
Yeah.
lot worse. So you make that transition from being in the corporate America like role. You're now kind of running your business full time, and I'm sure if it's like me, like what you thought it was going to be, it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you had some ups and downs and everything like that. So looking back, how have you like navigated through some of those ups and downs of like of the business? Like for me, I'm like, we just came out of a slight dip and a slight down and
Mhm.
everything, where like the last, I think 6 to 8 weeks, I didn't like pay myself anything. I just paid myself last week for the first time in like 6 weeks. And that's the first time I've had to do that in basically since I went full time into the agency last year.
Sure.
And so like there are some things that now I'm like, okay, I'm making some adjustments, like making sure that doesn't hopefully doesn't happen again. So I'm sure you've kind of gone through a few of those kind of hiccups and everything over the last couple of years.
I talk about my tribe all the time, and that's not just, I have my family, because we don't have, our blood family is elsewhere. So, with that, like first out of the gate, 6 weeks in, Bobby Drummond, who is one of my favorite people on this planet, invited me to a networking group, and that was a game changer because the networking group was in the co-working space that I would join, that would introduce me to Larry Cohn, who was my mentor in the very beginning. He's the one that really helped me harness the self-talk.
Okay.
And so it just, everything was a tumbleweed for me that I just built on better. And so, the first year was so hard because the business wasn't coming like I thought it would be. And it was my fault because of looking back, I had no idea what the heck I was doing. And so I was faking it till I made it. And so, I just dove into the education piece.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this, that I'm constantly talking to you. Oh, I learned this week and this is so cool.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I implemented that step in the beginning, that I never want to be the smartest in the room that I walk into unless I am teaching. So, cause then it's awkward, but like, it just, like, I just went to the big photography conference for the first time. I
Yeah.
took that step, and overcame some imposter syndrome with that. And so, my family, my tribe, and always learning, because if you, as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, if you think you know everything, you're screwed,
Yep.
because you don't. I don't care how long you've been doing this. There's always something to learn, either because technology has changed, the industry's changing, or something. So you've got to be willing to be a lifetime student.
Yeah, absolutely. I was recording an episode earlier this week, and I was talking with somebody about this. When my last business closed, I called like just about every single investor that like invested in our business that was a connection of mine. And one of those investors had said to me, he said, I have two things, or he actually said, I have three things. One, I am not upset nor mad. Like when I invested that money, like I knew it was gone the moment that I wrote the check, because that is just the risk you take with investing. He said, but two, I wish I would have known what was going on sooner. And three, I wish you just would have reached out for help. And so like that's something that when I went full time into the agency, April 1st of last year, it was like I just remember those words, and like I ask for help all the time. I I think you know who he is, a gentleman named Adam McChesney. Like
Mhm.
he left his job doing medical device sales, making over 200 grand a year, to opening up his own agency. Basically went from 200 grand a year to nothing, to then grew this in I think 15 or 18 months to a like 1 point something $1 million business.
Yeah.
And like I was like, I have to get like he was a direct competitor of mine. And it was like I had to get close to my competitor and just like learn from his
Yeah.
mistakes and everything. And so that has what has allowed me to like basically go from like nothing to something with this business so fast, is like asking for help. And I do a lot of like joining a lot of coaching programs. I used to not believe in it, but now I do, in like in a way like buying access to your friends,
Mhm.
like in business and everything. And so like I'm right now going through the process of like possibly taking out like a line of credit, or going out and getting like an SBA loan, because there's business growth that's happening that I need to finance that. And part of what's going in there is I'm like, there's these other coaching programs that I want to like get into that I know will help me kind of go from this level to this level. So I'm like
Yep.
already planning for those expenses and everything, because asking for help is like the thing that's got me the closest. And I'm like, how can I ask for more help, is really what I'm trying to get to. So
For sure. When I was at the conference, I was asking every time. I was asking questions. If you're at a conference and you don't stay after and talk to the person that taught you something, and at least tell them your takeaway from it and have a conversation, you're selling yourself short. That was the biggest takeaway that I took away from my conference. Because one of the speakers was on branding, and I'm sitting in this class going, okay, I know a lot of this. And so I took some information that I knew, that I already knew, but like she had tweaked my thoughts on it. And
hmm
we sat there for an hour talking. And she's one of the top, when big corporations screw up, she's the one they bring in to fix it. So why the heck would I not want to learn from her?
Right.
And
Right.
so, and she gave me her email and we still keep in touch. So
Yeah.
like, it just, you've got to have, and choosing who you spend your time with is so important. One of my best friends, Deanna Lay, we met because a group of people said we needed to know each other. And 6 years later, my son calls her Aunt D, but she's like one of the biggest cheerleaders for my business. And so is her husband, Chris, who is basically my brother.
Yeah.
So it just, you never know. One, when you're meeting people, you never know, like, never sell anyone short. I hate going to networking meetings and you can see they're looking around me rather than looking at me while they talk,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm just a photographer and I'm like, that's fine. Bye.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's important to know that, like, so the episode that's actually going to release on Tuesday, I was interviewing with a guy and he was telling me about this concept of like, we are all like a chain and a link. And I mentioned Adam, and like the way I look at it is like, if Adam didn't show up every single day and give life his all, give his business and his mission his all, I would not be sitting here recording this podcast with you
yeah,
today, because like he's part of the ones that like helped push me to do this. And I even think of like um last year, a good part of what kept my business afloat was we were actually doing white label work for other marketing agencies. And so my dev team was doing the work. Well, looking back, I met one of the guys who we still actually do the work for at like some like boot camp weekend in Colombia, that we both just happened to be sitting at the same table. And because we both showed up that weekend to improve ourselves and our teams and everything like that, that's what then now 2 years afterwards, like he is a big part of my business. The other agency I met through my last company, and by me just showing up every day and him showing up every day.
yep,
And so many people are in like the instant gratification of like trying to get the business now. And I'll admit, like when I first went into the agency and when Avery got laid off in the middle of last year, it was like we were like, holy shit, like what are we gonna do?
right.
I did a little bit of that too, but then I quickly began to realize like the more value you give up front, the more that's going to pay off in dividends down the road, whether
Not
it's
be a freaking
directly from that
gatekeeper
person. Yes. Yes, exactly.
drives me nuts.
Yeah. So it is crazy. Like there is a guy that just came out. We are expanding our back patio and everything, and we had two quotes. One quote came in much cheaper than the other, but that wound up being because of the fact that like I knew his son, went to high school with the son, so he's like kind of
Yeah,
like helping us out a little bit. But the other guy gave us so much value up front and like what he was doing and everything, that it was almost like I want to go with him just because of all that. So even though we didn't go with him, I'm out in like the Facebook groups and referring them
right.
like crazy because of the fact that he gave value, and he wasn't there just to make a sale. He was there to build a relationship.
Sure.
And like that's what's most important to me. So um so want to kind of I have a list of questions that kind of like we prepare and everything that I'm wanting to go through. One of the things that you that I know about you is you grew up in like a small town. I
Very.
did not. And so being in a small town and being how outgoing and everything that you are, like, in my opinion, from what I know about small towns, sometimes they're like two different things. So, like, how has growing up in a small town like shaped your approach to business, to networking, and what you do in your entire, I'd say entire business, but in your entire life as well?
So I've been nicknamed. So in my hometown, um, it matters who your parents are. 100% matters, and who your
Okay.
family is, and things like that. And the ones that say it doesn't have one of the last names that benefit from that.
Okay.
So it always makes me giggle when they're like, "It's Mount Vernon's not like that." I'm like, okay. So, and I had my mother, very, very hardworking single mom, and my dad, very, very hardworking, very much both. I learned my work ethic from my family, from different
Okay.
members of that for sure. And so, because they showed me rather than told me. And so, I was very busy growing up. I was involved in everything. I was FCA president. I was involved in journalism. I was involved in band and theater, and I played softball. And my mom said her job was to make sure that I slept and ate a decent meal. That was her job at the point I got in high school. Not to parent me, but just to make sure I slept. Because I would be at school at 6 o'clock in the morning for FCA, and I wouldn't leave until about 10 o'clock because of whatever happened to be going on that season. And then I had to do homework. So, graduated, very good GPA, whatever. But the thing about Mount Vernon is I learned how to solve problems growing up there, of who I needed to talk to get what I needed done. One of my goals, and this is something you and I had in common, I learned about Hoosier Girls State, and I knew I wanted to go. And I knew that it, again, usually were the kids that their parents were somebody that got to go. So I made it a point to meet the head of the American Legion that helped pick. And I found out that he was a very big fan of the Mount Vernon Theater Department. So I made it a point every time after a show that he was there, I would walk up and thank him for coming.
Okay.
And just something as little as that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I didn't kiss his butt. I literally made it a point to find him every time, thanked him for coming to the show.
Yep.
And he found out who I was really quick, and I was the first choice when Hoosier Girls State happened. And that 100% is why I got picked. And I know that. And that was a lesson going forward. So like a big thing, my text, when it's going to predict what you're going to text, thank you for the opportunity to earn your business, is something that my phone knows, because it's something that just, I mean it, one, and it's something that's important to me. So, lots of things that in a small town, I learned you never knew who you were dealing with or who they were or who they knew. Because my mom loves telling this story. I got sick at school in 8th grade, lost my voice. It was the day before the academic bowl when I had to do my big monologue presentation. Couldn't talk. Literally, guidance counselor, who was my coach, sent an email to all the teachers, do not let Allison talk in class, which was a joke. Mom picked me up from track practice that day and goes, "Oh, you got your voice back." I hadn't talked to her all day. I didn't lose my voice before I left for school. And that was the scariest thing to me, that my mom knew. And it's because one of my teachers had popped into her work for something. Not for anything related to me, but like I never knew. I found out years later who told her. She didn't tell me. She's like, "Let this be a lesson that anything you do, I can find out." So, that's the kind of thing that, Roots and Wings, I always knew I was going to leave. I always knew I was going to live in St. Louis. I've had a love affair with St. Louis since I was a little bitty. And I knew I wanted to leave. My senior speech, I talked about leaving and that I wouldn't come back. And everybody was like, "Nope, you're going to end up in this town just like the rest of us." Wrong.
Wrong.
And so it's so weird. And I think growing up in Mount Vernon prepared me for St. Louis, because St. Louis is such a large city, small town.
Yep.
I've kind of been nicknamed the Kevin Bacon of St. Louis, that if you have a problem and you need it solved, that I can give me 3 phone calls, and I can typically, Avery learned that with Portrait of Hope this year. And so, and all the time when people are like, "Oh, you've experienced, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so." So those are I call them my Kevin Bacon moments.
Yeah, I was, that's where I was going to go next. Like, St. Louis is the biggest small town out there. I learned at one point that like, you are typically within, I guess the phrase is like, you're within 7 degrees of meeting the person you want to know. But I feel like in St. Louis, you're typically in like 1 to 2 degrees of actually like meeting the person you want to know on there. So it's crazy how how connected people are, and but it's also like it can be scary for your business as well, because if you do one wrong thing, like it can
Yep.
negatively affect you. But you also have to have like that abundance mindset that like one bad thing, like yes, it might get around or whatever, but you do enough good for other people. Like you'll have people who say like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that happened, but I know Allison, I know Brad, and like I'm sure there was something else behind the scenes that went on, like that kind of
Yep.
thing. So that's like one thing about St. Louis you have to be very, very like cautious about for us.
Oh, for sure.
So I want to kind of dive into a little bit of like the unfair advantage. So one of the things that I mentioned was like in your intro was having dyslexia and ADHD. That plays, I know just from like working with you and everything, like how much of a play that has made into your business. But a lot of like what this podcast is about is like where we are highlighting like what others would consider as unfair as like what has actually made us like successful in everything in our business. So how has that helped contribute to the success of your business?
Well, the ADHD plays a factor because sometimes I need to edit till 3 in the morning, and that's okay when you have that. It. I did not get diagnosed with either until I was in college. So I had already put the coping, I guess, mechanisms in place. Um, I have to be busy. If I'm not busy, then I am spinning, and
Yep.
I'm very much looking forward to not being busy in July so that I can fix my house because I don't have time right now. That'll be my next thing I'm busy with. But my big thing in my life, and I talked to you about this the other day, is I juggle a lot. And some things are glass balls, some things are wooden balls, and some things are plastic. And
Yep.
the glass balls constantly have to stay in the air. And the wooden balls need to, because if they fall, eventually they'll break or get damaged. Plastic balls, if they fall, it's fine. So one of the things you mentioned, my son, it is very, very important to me that I am an active part in his world. Um, it's going to click for him one day that his mom was not a stay-at-home mom, because he thinks that, well, within reason, because he knows Saturdays for the boys, because I'm usually at a photo shoot. But like this week he's at grandma's house because I needed to do a lot of catch-up work.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to the NASCAR race this weekend, and he's not big enough for that yet. So he's only 4. And so and he's a runner, and I'm not about that life when there are 40,000 people. So baseball game's different. But anyway, so the ADHD and the dyslexia, I had a college professor, it was actually my algebra professor, that said something that my work was right, but the answer was wrong, and she realized, I think you're flipping numbers. And so they tested, and sure enough, with numbers, I'm dyslexic. I guess that's why I married an accountant. He's an auditor. So that when I have questions about Excel or something, and he knows if he looks over my shoulder and I'm cussing under my breath, and I have my customer manager up, he goes, are you doing bookkeeping stuff? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, just give it here. Because the numbers aren't adding up normally.
Yeah.
And so I do what I can, and I ask for help. Is the biggest thing that I've learned. If you see me at a photo shoot, just stop and start flipping through the back of my camera. It's because my ADHD is doing something tweaky, and I need to bring my brain back centered. And it isn't weird for a photographer to be fooling with the back of their camera.
Yeah.
Because normally I'll go and then, move on. But if I'm like looking through pictures, it's because I need my brain to come back together. It'll be nothing like I caught myself earlier doing it while talking to you just now. I kind of stared off to the space, like I looked to the side for a second because my brain was doing what it does.
Yep.
It's called neurospicy is the phrase that I've learned, and my brain is the spiciest. So it is what it is, and I know when I need to ask for help, and I know when I need to kind of shut down for a couple
Yeah.
days. Because I also have fibromyalgia. So and with that, nothing's worse than when my brain's spinning and my body has a flare. Y'all pray for my husband when that happens, because it's not good. But so I have to listen to my body, and
Mm-hmm.
I am not afraid to tell people I'm having a day, and you're just gonna have to show me. Yesterday I was in a horrible mood, and it was because of a combination of the two. And I told my client when I was doing, I said, I'm going to warn you, y'all know I don't have a filter. It's worse today, and I'm going to do my best. I love working with y'all, and I'm normally in a good mood with y'all, but just show me some grace.
Yeah.
So, it is, you just have to, people like real, and you got to
Yep.
own it. And if you don't own it, then it's what it is.
And I'll even say on like the ADHD side of things, like I've noticed, like whenever we were doing my most recent like personal branding shoot, like we were taking pics and you were like taking them, and before you could even like almost like take the camera away from your face a little bit, like it was almost like you had one eye in the camera and one eye like looking around the room for the next like area to go shoot. And you're like, oh, we could go do this. Oh, we could do this. And then like you were done. You're like, no, like we're gonna do this instead. And then like that, it was like one of the last photos that like I could tell it was like an ADHD moment, wound up being like one of my most favorite pics out of that shoot.
Well, I'm good.
Yeah. So it's like,
I say my ADHD is one of my superpowers, because I'm
yep.
5 steps ahead of everything, and that is why I'm good at a wedding, because I see
Mm-hmm.
stuff as it's happening, and I can almost prepare. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I like to call like recently I used to not think I had it at all, and like Avery's one that made me realize I do. And so I actually like I had to bring on, it's been so bad for me that I brought on my admin Karen, who is absolutely amazing, because I drop like the ball on things a lot, and it's because of my ADHD just bouncing like between things. And so it's almost like as I'm dropping the ball, she's like catching a midair, and it's like, nope, I'm gonna correct this. Nope, I'm gonna. And so like she and I are learning how to work together and everything like that. And now it's getting to the point where things have become almost so seamless that like I'm putting her in place in certain areas where like I was dropping the ball because my brain was attracted to something else in that moment, and it kept happening, that like now I don't have to like be part of that at all. And the ADHD side of things is actually becoming a advantage, because being, in the entrepreneur role, you almost have to be less of a technician and more of like the visionary. And so that's where it's becoming very helpful, is because like my brain's bounce around between all these ideas, and I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. And then I can like write it out on the whiteboard, then come back to it because my brain got sidetracked over here. And while I'm sidetracked, it's thinking about this last thing and all those things. When it's almost all visionary work, it works. When you have part visionary, part like manager, part like technician type work, then that's when like it becomes messy and everything like that. So
that's why I have Mondays. If you look at my calendar, it says staff meeting. I'm a staff of one. And that's because all that crap that I have put off that I don't want to do, it gets done on Monday. And I don't leave the house. My son doesn't go to school on Mondays because he's still in preschool. And that'll change once he goes to school. But I'll probably just bring my butt straight back home. And so it almost, I'm a little OCD. That was one of the things they looked at when they were diagnosing me with the ADHD. And she's like, you're definitely a perfectionist, but you're not full blown OCD. And so that, thank God, makes my ADHD different than yours. Because every morning I have to be like, okay, what do I have to accomplish today? And I make my list, and I'm really good at sticking to a list. So, but the balls thing, that I will live and breathe by that analogy.
Yeah. Which I loved whenever you told me and Karen that on our call a couple weeks ago. And like, I've used it like several times, and now we're beginning to use it like internally and everything like that because we're making some big changes and everything. And I use that analogy, and I was like, telling my team, like, if I tell you this is like a glass ball, like I cannot have you drop the ball on this. And so it's like, thank you for that because it's been something that we've been using as well.
I'm
So
incorporating it and I went and looked it up and I can't figure out who came up with it because the two podcasts that I listened to, they reference someone else. So at that point, if you're not like, I feel like I can just say, heard this in
yeah,
a podcast. Blah, 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 blah.
yep.
Because I like giving credit where credit's due, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like the saying the you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and it's quoted by Wayne Gretzky and Michael Scott on that one. Like it's kind of like, yeah, there's multiple people who have kind of been the one that has like claimed that or coined it.
Who else is okay? Whatever.
So the Michael Scott quote, that is from, I forgot what show it is, but there was some show that the character's name was Michael Scott. He became very popular. No, man, now I have to.
Just like 15,000 people cringe when I said that. I've never made it through 3 episodes of The Office. It's not my jam.
It might be The Office. I thought it was something different. Yeah, I thought it was something different, but it looks like it is from The Office. So, but yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking right there. So, I know we're getting close to time, so kind of want to get us close to like wrapping up and everything. So anybody who's kind of like, I always like to kind of throw 2 things out here. Either one, trying to go through that transition from jumping from corporate America and they're doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Or they, have gone through like what you've gone through with like trying to manage like ADHD with the business and all that stuff. What are some advice and key takeaways that you would give to those individuals?
Do the hard thing. So something we mentioned earlier was adopting my son during the pandemic. That we went from not being parents to parents 57 days later. It was absurd. And you can go read my blog if you have a question about that. That's taking a shot at parenting. But the world exploded 6 weeks after he was born, and I was deemed, what was the word? How did they, not unimportant, but non-essential. I hate that phrase. Which was fine because that gave me forced maternity leave. But do the hard thing. It's not going to be easy. And if you're not capable of if you can't physically push yourself to take that leap, then entrepreneurship's not for you.
Right.
Because you've got to be ready to do the hard thing. And making the decisions for your business aren't always easy. Always be learning. There's a difference from cutting someone off and knowing that they're not serving you because of their proven behavior, and cutting someone off that you haven't even given them the opportunity to understand what role they can play in your world. And you've got to learn the skills to figure that out. Because I'm not saying waste time on people, but also don't be afraid to invest some time in someone that it doesn't make sense. Let's see, what else? Either learn it or spend the money.
Yep.
And don't just blow the money. You know this, and it drives you nuts talking to me. I don't spend money unless I have to. I'm the most frugal person when it comes to business. And that's actually some things that I teach other photographers, because, and it'll be nothing. If I need to do something, well, then mama's going to hustle and find a couple extra shoots or consults or something to pay for it. I'm not afraid to spend money, but I don't unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
don't spend money to spend money.
Which is a problem I used to have. I still kind of do in a way, but it's much better than it used to be. So, for Allison, thank you again for joining me today. For anybody who's listening, Yeah, absolutely. For anybody who's listening, by the time this episode releases, we will actually have Allison's new site launched. So you can go take a look at a little bit of our work at btpbyallison.com. And for our listeners, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review so we can continue to produce more episodes like this. And please don't forget to share our episode on social media and tag our guest Allison so she can continue to get more exposure of what she's doing and her unfair advantage. But until next time, this is your unfair advantage.